OP says this started as one boundary, but the reaction made it look like everyone else thought OP was still available on demand. So is OP being cold, or did the family just get way too comfortable?
Well, we are looking at a situation today where an anonymous, incredibly messy family dispute suddenly turns into a massive public referendum.
Right, a referendum on where family care ends and financial control begins.
Oh,
Welcome to today's deep dive, everybody. If you're joining us, you know we love dissecting these wild internet stories.
oh, absolutely. And this one is a classic.
It really is. Today's sources center on a viral, verified open Reddit thread from the RAITAH subreddit. Our mission is to really explore this fascinating case study of an anonymous user, OPRE, navigating a crazy family dynamic.
And if you are looking at this from the outside, you might be wondering how we navigate the details of an anonymous post.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So we treat this entirely in what we call Reddit mode.
Reddit mode, exactly.
Meaning, we are not a court of law, we aren't verifying medical, financial, or legal claims, and we definitely aren't validating private accusations of neglect or coercion.
Right, we're just examining what OP says, what OP claims, and what the commenters argue to understand the underlying human contradictions.
Exactly. We look at the story exactly as it was presented to the internet.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The timeline here is just crucial to understanding how things got so completely out of hand.
It really is.
According to the thread, right after graduating high school, OP actually wanted to get their own apartment, which is, the standard expected life step. You graduate, you move out, you start your life.
Right, but that didn't happen.
No, it didn't. OP stayed with her mother and her husband, and why? OP says the husband was injured and simply refused to work. So OP stayed to pay rent so the family wouldn't lose the house.
And at first glance, you think, wow, what a responsible, caring kid stepping up when the family needs them.
I mean, yeah, you do. But let's look at the concrete numbers OP provides, because this is where the reality of the situation really sets in. Rent was supposed to be $600 a month.
Which, in most places, that's a steal. Or at least a fair contribution for a young adult living at home.
Totally fair. But OP claims their mother constantly asked for help with extra bills. And over time, that creeping scope pushed OP's contribution to as much as $2,000 a month.
Wow.
Yeah, and that doesn't even include what OP says they were spending on groceries for everyone in the house.
And we really have to pause on those numbers because jumping from 600 to 2,000 plus groceries fundamentally changes the trajectory of a young adult's life.
Oh, completely.
At 600 a month, OP can theoretically still save money, build credit, plan an exit strategy.
Right.
But at 2,000 a month plus feeding a household, OP's economic mobility is completely paralyzed. They are generating income, but all of it is being absorbed by the family unit.
Exactly. OP is essentially subsidizing an entire household at the exact moment they should be building their own foundation.
It's a huge burden.
And on top of that, OP claims their mother made them take out loans in their name under the explicit threat that if she didn't get the money, they would all be homeless.
Unbelievable.
It's like a subscription service that quietly triples in price over the years, except canceling the subscription means making your family homeless.
That's a great analogy.
But I have to push back on OP's narrative here for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
At what point does a young adult voluntarily paying rent cross the line into being an ATM? Like, why didn't OP just leave when the numbers stopped making sense? If my rent goes from 600 to 2,000, I am breaking the lease and leaving.
Well, what's fascinating here is the psychology of the frog in boiling water. You don't just leave because the stakes are profoundly personal.
Right, because it's not just a landlord.
Exactly. The opposing side's incentive, the mother's request, is framed entirely around safety and survival. When a landlord raises the rent, it's a business transaction. You can do the math and walk away.
Right.
But when your mother says, if you don't take out this loan, we will be out on the street, the pressure operates on a completely different psychological level.
It becomes like a hostage situation framed as family duty.
Yes. OP is trapped in a dynamic where their refusal to provide endless capital is equated with abandoning their family to ruin. The mechanism of control here relies entirely on weaponized guilt.
Weaponized guilt, that is exactly it.
And over time, the abnormal becomes normal. You pay an extra utility bill one month, you cover groceries the next.
And suddenly you're paying for everything.
Right. Managing the entire financial burden of the household becomes the baseline expectation. And pushing back against that baseline feels like an act of betrayal.
Because you're not just fighting a bank, you're fighting the person who raised you.
Exactly.
But then, OP claims the situation escalated from this slow, agonizing financial bleed into a sudden, massive crisis.
The ultimatum.
Yes. According to the thread, the mother's husband threatened divorce. And he didn't just threaten divorce, he issued a staggering ultimatum. He said that either OP or OP's sister had to buy the house, or he was going to sell it to, quote, some rando for $100,000 less within a week.
It's just a massive escalation.
First of all, the sheer panic of that threat is insane. Selling a house for $100,000 under market value in 7 days just to spite your family, it's absurd.
It is absurd, and that is precisely its function. This is a classic synthetic emergency.
A synthetic emergency.
Yeah. By creating an artificially compressed timeline 1 week and a catastrophic irrational penalty, like losing $100,000 in equity, the husband bypasses everyone's rational decision-making processes.
Oh.
You don't have time to consult a financial advisor. You don't have time to look at the housing market. You don't even have time to realize that legally and logistically, closing a real estate transaction in 7 days is incredibly difficult.
Right, it's basically impossible.
The goal of a synthetic emergency is to force a panicked binary choice. Buy the house or the family is instantly destroyed.
And the panic absolutely worked. OP says the mother and sister heavily pressured OP to do it, claiming OP would let them all be homeless.
That weaponized guilt again.
Exactly. OP felt totally unready to buy a house, but under that crushing weight, they ended up pressuring a friend to co-sign the mortgage with them.
Dragging a third party into the mess.
Right, the friend was apparently excited to buy a house and agreed. Now, OP emphasizes that they set a very explicit boundary here. OP told the family, if I do this, you have to pull your weight, especially financially, because my friend and I cannot afford these payments on our own.
So OP is trying to establish a new set of rules.
But I have to stop here and push back again. OP explicitly says they were manipulated into this massive financial commitment. Yet OP also actively brought a friend into this mess to co-sign. Isn't OP participating in the very same pressure cooker dynamic they are complaining about?
It's a very fair point.
I mean, they took the family's mess and infected a third party with it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychology of how trauma and pressure replicate themselves is deeply at play here.
All right.
When you are operating in a closed-loop economic system where panic is the primary currency, you lose your baseline for what constitutes a reasonable request.
Oh, that makes sense.
OP is drowning under the weight of the family's demands. To survive, OP uses their own relationship capital to extract a resource, in this case, the friend's credit and legal liability. It is a chain reaction of borrowed leverage.
Wow, a chain reaction.
Yeah. The husband leverages the threat of divorce against the mother. The mother and sister leverage the threat of homelessness against OP. And OP, desperate to neutralize the threat but unable to do it alone, leverages their friendship to secure a cosigner.
Yeah.
And we have to look at the severe legal reality of what OP asked this friend to do. Co-signing a mortgage isn't just splitting rent, it is a decades-long legal anchor.
Seriously.
That friend's debt-to-income ratio is now completely tied to the whims of OP's deeply dysfunctional family. OP inadvertently dragged an innocent bystander into the blast radius because, in OP's world, using the people closest to you to survive financial disaster is the only modeled behavior.
That is a terrifying contagion of panic. Everyone is just passing the inevitable ruin to the next person in line, hoping someone else's credit score could absorb the hit.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the actual execution of this new, incredibly fragile agreement. OP bought the house with a friend. OP set the rule you have to pay.
And how did that go?
Well, according to OP, the sister paid rent for 2.5 months. And then, abruptly, she paid absolutely nothing for 5 months.
5 whole months.
5 months. OP claims the sister said she needed to prioritize other payments and groceries and, quote, etc. Just etc.
Wow.
So we have 5 months of OP and the friend carrying the family's dead weight again, this time with a legal mortgage on the line.
That word, etc., is doing a tremendous amount of heavy lifting there.
Seriously.
What we are seeing is the systemic rejection of OP's new boundary. In the old arrangement, OP was the shock absorber. If there was a deficit, OP paid it.
Right.
When OP bought the house, OP tried to change the fundamental rules of the relationship from a dictatorship of demands into a cooperative financial agreement. But the family didn't actually agree to a new system, they just temporarily accommodated OP's stress.
That's such a good way to put it.
2.5 months is exactly how long it took for the sister's entitlement to override the new agreement. She reverted to the old system where OP simply figures it out. The sister prioritizes her own life because she fundamentally believes OP will never actually let the family fail.
She basically called OP's bluff. She assumed OP's fear of them being homeless would always outweigh OP's need for financial fairness.
Exactly.
And this leads to the dramatic climax of the entire thread. OP reached an absolute breaking point. OP served their mom with an eviction notice.
Okay.
And they did it specifically on the mom's birthday.
Oh, wow. This is the moment a desperate private plea transforms into a rigid legal boundary.
It is.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to stop and look at the optics of this. I
Right.
totally get why OP snapped. 5 months of zero rent while your family lives in a house you bought for them, jeopardizing your friend's financial future, it's infuriating.
Of course.
But was this the cleanest possible boundary? We really have to ask, was this timed specifically to hurt? Giving an eviction notice on a birthday is incredibly pointed.
It definitely is.
Reddit stories often compress years of messy, complicated history into one dramatic moment. Did OP say, hey, it's month 4, you need to pay, or I'm calling a lawyer? Or did OP just quietly seethe, smile at the party, and then drop a legal bomb while the mom was blowing out candles?
The timing is exactly why this specific story caught fire online. Both sides are dressing their arguments in the language of care and duty.
Right.
The family expects OP to endure the unpaid rent and the financial anxiety because, we are family and family helps family. They view the unpaid rent not as theft, but as an expected subsidy.
While OP calls this refusal self-protection.
Conversely, yes, OP views this eviction as desperate self-protection. You ask if it was time to hurt, almost certainly.
Yeah.
But we have to examine why people in highly enmeshed, manipulative family systems resort to theatrical boundaries. When a family has spent years ignoring subtle requests, normal communication, and desperate pleas, a polite boundary is invisible to them.
Wow.
Yeah. If OP had handed them a notice on a random Tuesday, the family likely would have dismissed it, argued it away, or guilted OP into withdrawing it.
Oh, I see.
To make a boundary register in a system that is fundamentally opposed to it, the boundary often has to be delivered as a spectacle. It has to be loud, shocking, and socially unavoidable. The birthday eviction wasn't just a legal document, it was a flare gun. It was OP ensuring the action could not be minimized or swept under the rug.
A flare gun.
Yeah.
It illuminated the entire landscape of their dysfunction, and that flare gun lit up the internet as well.
It definitely did.
Let's look at how this private, messy living room fight became a massive public referendum. This thread had 1,348 upvotes and 171 comments. The jury of the internet convened, and they did not hold back.
They rarely do.
I want to read the sharpest top comments exactly as they were written, because the language tells you everything you need to know about the audience's reaction.
Let's hear them.
First, we have user visual accountant 425 with 1,813 upvotes, who delivers a very blunt verdict: sell the house and move far away.
Straight to the point.
Very. Then we have user gyre instinct with 560 upvotes, who framed it entirely differently. Nope, you didn't evict your mom, you evicted people financial exploding you.
Interesting framing.
And user just as it can be so cruel with 414 upvotes, who said, sell the house and go no contact for a time, these people do not care.
The verdict is pretty unanimous.
It is, and notice what's missing. The commenters aren't even talking about the birthday etiquette anymore. Nobody is in the comment section debating whether OP should have waited 24 hours out of politeness. So I have to ask you, why did the internet completely ignore the birthday part of the eviction? If you do that in real life, society judges you as deeply petty.
This raises an important question about how the internet acts as a jury. The thread is acting as a jury not to prove facts, but to vote on the unspoken social rule broken here.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, there is a hierarchy of social offenses being weighed here. On one side, you have the violation of politeness ruining a birthday. On the other side, you have the violation of basic autonomy, systemic financial exploitation, and manipulation.
And the crowd decided manipulation is way worse than ruining a birthday party.
Exactly. The crowd overwhelmingly decided that the pattern of control and money pressure far outweighed the social etiquette of a birthday. The commenters recognized the birthday complaint for what it really is, a decoy.
A decoy.
It's a classic deflection tactic. It allows the family to say, look how mean and cruel OP is being to their own mother on her special day, which conveniently shifts the spotlight away from the fact that they haven't paid rent in 5 months and forced OP into a mortgage under duress.
Wow, that's incredibly manipulative.
The internet is highly sensitive to Darvo tactics: deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender.
Bravo, right.
The commenters saw the family trying to play the victim over the birthday timing and rejected it completely. The consensus is that OP isn't being needlessly cruel. OP is simply finally speaking the only language the family has ever respected, which is severe consequence.
Consequence. Because for years, OP absorbed all the consequences for everyone else's actions. The injured husband refusing to work, OP pays the price.
Right.
The mother needing loans to avoid homelessness, OP's name and credit take the hit. The stepdad's artificial one-week ultimatum. OP and the friend shoulder a 30-year mortgage.
Exactly.
And the internet looked at that unbroken chain of exploitation and just said, cut the cord.
That's what it comes down to.
So, as we unpack the layers of this, I want to ask you, the listener, to do an internal check. Where would you draw the line in a situation like this?
It's a tough question.
What would OP have to do before the boundary actually becomes too harsh? If the eviction notice was served on Christmas morning, or if it was served while someone was recovering in the hospital, at what point does fighting fire with fire just burn down your own moral high ground?
Right.
And on a flip side, what would the family have to do before the pressure they apply becomes undeniable control? The ultimate question here isn't a simple, comfortable binary of who is the bad guy. It's fundamentally a question of power.
Absolutely.
Who held the power to make this incredibly toxic, extractive situation feel completely normal for so long? And who is furious now that OP finally changed the rules of the game?
It is a profound shift in power. But there is a lingering reality here that goes beyond the immediate satisfaction of a Reddit victory. OP successfully defended their financial boundary, and the internet cheered them on.
Yeah, they did.
But the hidden stakeholder in all of this is the future of the family relationship itself. You don't serve your mother an eviction notice on her birthday and then seamlessly go back to having pleasant Sunday dinners.
No, definitely not.
The family dynamic isn't just disrupted, it is permanently fractured. It leaves OP with a deeply unresolved tension. Does OP hold the line, sell the house, and walk away entirely? Do they attempt to negotiate a compromise with people who have repeatedly broken agreements? Or does OP simply have to accept that the relationship is permanently broken because the old extractive arrangement no longer works?
The internet loves a clean break, but reality leaves a massive mess.
It really does. It demands we ask a difficult question of ourselves. When we finally set rigid boundaries with people who are entirely accustomed to our limitless, unquestioning help, are we truly prepared for the reality that they might not actually want a relationship with the new, bounded version of us?
Man, that is a heavy thought to mull over. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Think about that boundary question, and we'll see you next time.